and Tim was talking about him coming back, as we said, the chaos here changes everything in the Eastern Conference. So should he be healthy? And look, because you talked about it last night, Kyle mentioned it being in the arena, of how he didn't look injured. He looked like he was just more fatigued, getting his leg back underneath him because he hasn't played meaningful basketball. If he is in fact healthy and can get through it, what are their chances? What do you look at their chances in the Eastern Conference, and how much does he throw a monkey wrench in things?
Oh, look, Boston has been the best team by far this year. It's not even close. They're the best team on offense in the East, best team on defense in the East. They have the they've been the most consistent team when they're healthy. They've got the best depth, maybe not 1 through 10, but 1 through 7 where it really matters. They're in a class of their own.
And nobody cares about 9 and 10 guys in the rotation in the playoffs anyway.
Outside of that, like I always go back to, Kyle said this, like it was like days before Joel Embiid got injured, but it was after the Bucks hired Doc Rivers, and we're all like, look, Doc's an upgrade. He will bring some competency. That team does not scare me in the playoffs. Not sure I'd necessarily say the Sixers are a 50% or greater chance of winning, but they do not scare you. And I think it was so easy to lose sight of that over the last 2 months because you're watching everything just sort of look out of place without him. I give them a lot of credit because over the last month they really did pick it up defensively and were able to get stops and really get out in transition, because thank goodness for that, because their half-court offense was a disaster. But I think it was real easy to look at what they couldn't do over the last couple of months and just forget how. Where's Ash? What is it? 28-7, something like that.
Last night.
I love that we have to rely on Ash for this.
He's our statistician on the show. Yeah. They are a really. He's right there. He's good. Come on, Ash. Hurry up.
While he's talking.
Get to it. I see him chatting right now. Pay attention. Anyway, completely distracted. They're a really good basketball team with him on the floor. Like really, really good. They were winning a ton of games. They were towards the top of the league in net rating. They were a legitimate contender. So yes, I think every other team in the East, outside of Boston, like Boston should be like, if we take care of business, we've got this, because they're the best team. They've earned that right. Everyone else has flaws. And yes, the Sixers, even with Embiid, you cannot expect Joel Embiid to take an 8th seed to a perfect team. That's just not how it works, even the best players in the world. But the best players in the world can take an 8th seed into becoming a team that is a real threat to anyone in a 7-game series. And I think the Sixers, outside of Boston, are a real threat to anyone in the Eastern Conference in a 7-game series.
Yeah, so this stretch, I'd say predominantly it's important just for Joel to get his sea legs, get his lungs, all that. Winning games is still important. You want to push high up, as high up the standings as possible. But Joel and his health and how he's looking, feeling, playing off of his teammates is of number one importance. But I will say, if they can get that play-in game at home and be the 7th seed, I would feel a whole hell of a lot better about it. Granted, if they could somehow jump Indiana, that'd be even better, but just it looks completely unrealistic from where we're sitting today. But the difference between
is there something wrong with the studio?
Huh?
Just said it looks completely different from where we're sitting today. Is there something wrong with the studio?
Oh my God, with the dad jokes.
Look, I'm tired. We just did a show like 12 hours ago.
27-8.
Okay.
Yep.
So
thank you, Ash.
The difference between playing Milwaukee in round 1 and playing Boston is just monumental to me, because not only would you have to play the toughest team first, I just think the Doc Rivers element, I think Dame has not been all that good this year. I mean, it's March and who cares, whatever, but the Bucks are out there losing to the fucking Wizards yesterday, even with a monster Giannis performance. So you can't even be like, oh, well, Giannis took the night off. They didn't care about that game. It was like Giannis went balls to the wall, and they're still a flawed enough team to lose to a team like the Wizards. So that's a good draw. And then you get past them, and you're playing, who would it be right now? I guess it'd be the winner of Cleveland, Indiana.
Cleveland's been a 500 team for the last couple of months.
And the Sixers
without Joel are capable of beating them, let alone, like, those guys have never really shown a consistent ability to slow Joel down. So that's a great draw for them on top of that. And then, who knows? Like, more than likely, you're then playing Boston in a conference finals. But by deferring that as long as you can, you have the advantage of maybe somebody suffers an injury. Maybe something goes haywire. The Boston machine could fall apart in some ways. You don't want to play them out the chute when one, they're going to have a week's worth of rest coming off the end of the regular season because of the play-in tournament. That doesn't help you at all. You also don't want Joel, who has played Boston many times in the playoffs, and when he has played them banged up, not in his best shape, all that, it has been ugly. They have preyed on all his weaknesses. They've flooded him with pressure defense. So if you can avoid them and work your way into game shape, game sharpness, all that against a more vulnerable team, I'd feel a hell of a lot better. Like, that's a team that I'm not saying I'd pick them to go to the finals or win the championship or anything, but they have a real puncher's chance to make a run at that point.
Right before we came in here, I was on Twitter, and someone had put up a thing of the record with Adrian Griffin with the Bucks, of course, where their record was really good. And we still know that there were some internal things as to why he was let go, but also pointing out that since Doc Rivers has arrived, that they were basically a 500 team since he has gotten here. So they have not, maybe they have, maybe they haven't, where they're still trying to figure things out under Doc Rivers, but you might catch them at the right time in the postseason. And you've already shown that you can play with that basketball team in the beginning of the season when everyone's healthy. Chris Middleton wasn't there, but everyone else was in the lineup for the Sixers and the Bucks minus Chris Middleton. And even after, where you have shown that you can play with them in a series. So that one is going to be the one that you focus on and that you target, because as these guys said, you just simply don't want to see Boston right away. You want to be as close to healthy as possible going into that final round matchup before you get to the NBA Finals with the finals triple on the line, if the Sixers are able to make it that far. And also, just looking at some of the others, to go on the devil's advocate side of things, you have to include some fans don't believe the Sixers have a chance at all, where they feel like they're going to be knocked out in the first round, period. This team is not good enough, as our good friend Elaine Bruno says. The team is just simply not good enough. They rely too much on Joel Embiid. They cannot win. And Elaine's not alone. I'll just read it. Y'all expecting Joe to carry a team that's an 8th seed. Without him, this team is not good enough.
Yeah, it turns out the team without their best player in a sport that hinges on the best player more than any other professional sport isn't that good without him. We have said this on the pod many times, all of us. This past 2 months, as we've talked about the team, like, you can't read much into it at all. Like, there's very little meaningful data to take from, okay, so the Sixers are bad without Joel. What is that? Who cares?
So Milwaukee,
of course they are.
Milwaukee has 6 more wins than the Sixers right now. If Giannis had missed 2 months and Embiid played the entire time, would those be reversed? Probably.
Yeah.
They're both very flawed teams who rely on their superstars quite a bit. That's not a news flash. There's only one team that can really probably miss one player, one team in East that can miss one player for an extended stretch and probably still be okay. And that's why we said Boston is in a class of their own. Everyone else relies on their stars. Absolutely.
Yeah, I get it. I understand. I think really, if you want to drill down on it and you want to be skeptical, I would say, one, you're going in with banged up Embiid. 2, your second star is a guy who this will be his first opportunity to be the main perimeter guy on a playoff team. We've talked all about how great Tyrese has been as Joel's number 2, how they play off each other, all that. But the level of attention he will get in the postseason is much different than anything he's faced before. I feel pretty good about what he's shown this year, the growth he's shown as a point guard, as a guy running and leading the offense for long stretches of the season. But you would feel better if they had a third guy where you're like,
sure,
that's the
100%.
dude, right? Yep. Like someone who Tyrese is off the floor. All right, who's the partner for Joel? Like right now, we're looking at a situation where is it Kyle Lowry? Is it Kelly Oubre, frankly, sometimes? Because Tobias has not been good enough for months for us to go into the playoffs. Be like, I feel safe and confident with him running the offense, being a focal point off of Joel, running pick and rolls, dribble handoffs, whatever with him in those maxi-less minutes. Like, that's a real problem. If you get bad Kelly Oubre, which, look, frankly, you could, it'd be a lot to ask for him to be the third best player on a team with real aspirations. But if Kelly does not play at the level he's been at recently, it could fall apart. Like that's a very real concern. And I get that. They don't have the level of third guy that some of these other contenders do. I think that is legitimate. But if you're just talking about, oh, the team was bad without him, I don't think is a real concern, because if they make the playoffs and Joel gets hurt, we're not going to be sitting here being like, oh, they still got a puncher's chance. We're going to say the season's over, they're fucked. It is all about Joel, to a lesser extent Tyrese, and after that, it's just you hope and you pray.
Look, we watch the Sixers every day. Everyone in this chat watches the Sixers on an almost night-to-night basis. For your own sanity, I hope it's not every game, but a lot of them. We see a lot of you here post-game each and every night. You pick apart your own team's flaws. The team that you watch the most is seemingly the most flawed team. Milwaukee, in the 2,600 or 2,100 possessions that Giannis has been on the bench, has a negative 4.2 net rating. That is worse than the Sixers' net rating without Joel Embiid on the floor. The problem is Joel Embiid has been on the bench 4,600 possessions compared to, like I said, 21 for Giannis. That has influenced the standings in a big way. I think one player, especially when you have a team full of role players, and Kyle's right, like when you talk about the third best player, the third best scorer, everyone is inconsistent in that role. Buddy's inconsistent, Tobias is inconsistent, Kelly's inconsistent. I think a lot of fans like him because at least his effort is consistent, but his productivity is not. There's nobody who you can rely on each and every night to step into that role. And
get him, Rick.
Yes. And I think that creates a little bit of concern for a lot of people. But one player in Joel Embiid creates a massive difference. These are the 3-point percentage with Embiid on the floor compared to without. Maxey, all right, he's consistent, 37% in both. Tobias Harris, 37% to 33% with Embiid versus without. Kelly Oubre, 39% to 28%. Batum, 47% to 38%. And Melton, 36% to 34%. Some of that is low sample size. Like Kelly is only 79 attempts with Embiid on the floor. We'll see how that tracks going forward. Harris, again, is a much bigger sample size without Embiid than with, but there's some logic to it. He creates shots that are so much easier for everyone else on the floor. And when you have a team full of role players, losing that one real creator, that one guy with gravity, that one guy who forces double teams, has a massive, massive impact. You see that with Giannis and the Bucks. You see that with Embiid and the Sixers. This is a completely different team. We've been saying it for 2 months, and I think it's pretty obvious that is the case.
We all silly like the mayor.